Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Liz Jelsomine. I'm the organizer of tonight's panel discussion. I'm so excited to introduce our panelists and to hear this dialogue between a mutual aid effort, some photographers and photography organizations in Philadelphia. And I look forward to hearing their insight on the importance in photography and underserved communities, how photography can be used to uplift youth and each other, and the importance of representation. So thanks again for joining us. I just want to give a little bit of background about where the panel discussion is coming from. It is part of 2020 Photo Festival, which takes place annually in Philadelphia. Let's see if I can, there you go. And this is the festival's second year, and it's also my second year serving on the festival's committee. Our intern, Maddie, is going to share a link for the festival in the chat now, so be sure to check it out. There's tons of free workshops, exhibitions, panel discussions like this one, and even a book fair that's happening this Saturday at Cherry Street Pier from 1 to 6 p.m. And so this year during the festival, I held a few community programs and exhibitions. The festival's theme this year happens to be community, so it kind of fit right in. I had been wanting to organize a couple free community photo days for a while now as a way to give back to the community through my love of photography. So I ended up holding 2 free community photo days at Bartram's Garden and Northern Liberties Recreation Center, where 60 groups of friends and families came to participate in photo shoots of their choice. We did everywhere from work headshots to family photos to product shots to for an entrepreneur. And participants were able to leave with copies of their photos as well as have their photos emailed to them as well. And then these community photo days evolved into 2 exhibitions to celebrate community. One of the shows is currently up at Cherry Street Pier through October 2nd, and it features the work of 3 BIPOC artists. We have Mario Cabral, Adrian Renee, and Kevin Bass, who is also the co-founder of Homies Helping Homies, which is a mutual aid effort in Southwest Philadelphia. And Maddie will share a link in the chat about Homies so you can learn a little bit more about them. And all proceeds from this exhibition went to Homies Helping Homies. Through the reception for this exhibition, we were able to raise $700 for Homies Helping Homies, which was really amazing with the help of the artist print sales and the donations we got for the raffle. So thank you to the businesses that donated to that raffle, which you can find at the link as well. And then we'll be celebrating a closing exhibition for this, a closing reception for this exhibition this Saturday from 6 to 8 p.m. at Cherry Street Pier. And Maddie will also be sharing a link to that Facebook event for that reception, so you can join us if you're able to. That would be great. And lastly, I want to talk about I'm also part of Gravy Studio, which is one of the main organizers of 2020 Photo Festival. And the Community Photo Days also led to doing another exhibition at Gravy Studio as well. And that's currently up, and it will be up through October 31st. And we're going to have an opening reception for that show this Thursday. From 6 to 9 p.m. And we'll be sharing a link for that as well, so you can learn more about the opening reception. And all the proceeds from this exhibition also is going to Homies Helping Homies. So, and then through these free community days that we held, I was also able to connect with Photography Without Borders, which is a really great organization that connects kids with cameras to kind of document and tell their own personal stories and help make change with social justice that way. So they also attended these community photo days and took pictures as well. And some of their photos will be displayed in this exhibition. So, and we're lucky enough to have the founder of Photography Without Borders join us tonight for the panel discussion. And yeah, we had the PTSSD grant and Unique Photo were huge sponsors that made all of this possible for us. So we're really grateful for that. And I want to just get started by introducing the panelists. So first we have Kevin Bass. He is the photographer and co-founder of Homies Helping Homies. His work documents the citizens of Philadelphia, and I'm glad to have him join us tonight with his photography background, but also having his experience with a mutual aid personally. So we're really excited to have him with us tonight. We also have Tony Rocco. He's the founder and executive director of Photography Without Borders. And yeah, they focus on students who are in the neighborhoods in North Philadelphia, and they connect children with photography to tell their own stories. And it's even been used in city council meetings to make change in the communities in Philadelphia. And it's a really great program, so we're really happy to have you guys with us as well. We have Danielle Morris. She's a youth education coordinator at Tilt. She's also a photographer. And Tilt is has a free after school program where they connect high schoolers with cameras if they need them and equipment, and gives them access to scanning and computers and Photoshop, and teaches them the basics of photography at all levels, and helps kind of kickstart their journey in photography and tell their stories that way. So we're happy to have you here too. And lastly, we have Leroy Karim, and he is a photographer in Philadelphia, a Muslim American photographer who documents the experiences of Philadelphia residents and tells his own story through his imagery, and also the story of human experience through the people of Philadelphia as well. And we are very excited to have all of you here with us. Thank you for joining us. And I'm excited to get this started. I'm gonna go ahead and ask that the panelists can unmute themselves. Awesome, thank you. And I guess I would love to start the conversation by asking kind of like what representation means to all of you in relation to yourselves and to your organizations. Whoever wants to get started.
Yeah.
Well, I guess you go ahead.
No, go ahead. You got it. You got it.
All right. Well, I mean, I think everybody likes to be represented, right? Everybody wants to, feel like they're part of the conversation, who we are as Philadelphians. And it looks from, I'm really, proud to be part of this panel. A lot of esteemed people here doing some really, really great work, especially people of color, because, our story sometimes isn't told, through, the main sources of media. And a lot of times our kids, as a kid growing up, I didn't really feel I'd see myself, who I was. And I used photography to explore that and figure out who I was as a Latino Anglo, growing up in South Philadelphia. And that's what we try to teach our kids in our program, is that they can figure out who they are through our program, and they could tell their own stories through photography. Everybody's doing photography today. Everybody's got an Instagram, everybody's got like 100 social media things. Everybody's taking pictures, but people aren't really telling stories with them. They're kind of doing the same thing over and over, and they're not really getting to the root of what they could do with this incredibly powerful medium. And we try to tell them, like, you can go a lot further than selfies. You can actually tell people who you are if you have the courage to go ahead and be brave and really dig deep and figure that out. You could share that story, and it could be a really powerful story. So that's what we try to do.
Thank you for sharing. Leroy, I'd love to hear.
Yeah, Liz, can you do me a favor, ask me the question? Can you ask the question one more time? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I would just like to hear kind of like what representation means to you and your work generally. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so representation is huge, right? Being a black male, right? Being a black male Muslim and being from the North Philadelphia area, really seeing what does that experience look like outside of the context of trauma, through protests, through violence, right? Like, what does I feel as though the need for that representation is huge, right? Like, I feel as though that Black folks, specifically in Philadelphia, need to see what their everyday life look like outside of, what is glamorized, and as I like to call it, trauma porn, right? What's Black life outside of trauma porn? And I really feel as though that uh that's what representation means to me, is really depicting and telling the story of Black life outside of, like I said, outside of those things that are already preconceived. Um and right, like we know what protest looks like. We know what traumatic experiences look like, but what does the mundane life of a Black Philadelphian look like? And that's what that I try to use that as a tool for, I guess, answering the question or approaching the concept of representation through my work.
Awesome, thank you.
I love that you mentioned outside of the trauma. I feel like early on in like figuring out what I wanted to take pictures of, or who I wanted to take pictures of, or if I even want to take pictures of people, like one of the things that I was confronted with is like so much of like the intellectualization of art is like surrounded by whatever the experiences are that we went through were. And even if they weren't like wholly positive or wholly great, there's so much beauty and all these other things in it. Like we're so much more than the negative things that we experience. Like a lot of like who I am is more so like the little things that I do every day. You know what I mean? Like the things that I see when I walk outside my house, like what I think about when I wake up in the morning, and not all of that is always just like the painful Black struggle or racism or Black Lives Matter or like all of these other things. Like we're so much more than just like we have to stand up and fight back. You know what I mean? Because I get tired of that. Like it's exhausting and it's heavy. But then I'm also confronted with like who gets to tell the story. You know what I mean? If I got to tell my own story, it might not be the same story that people that oftentimes hold the microphone or hold the camera tell about Blackness or the Black experience or Black reality. You know what I mean? So I absolutely love that point. It's something that I come back to all the time. Like I think I try to represent people not necessarily by like what they look like or who they are, because that can so easily be re-traumatizing. But more so the things that they do and the colors that they wear, or, the places that they walk by, or the errands that they run every day, or like their favorite park bench or something like that,
Awesome, thank you guys for sharing. Yeah, I guess I will start by asking Leroy, what have you learned most since like delving deep into your photography practice within the community, and where do you see the potential and possibilities for your own work going within the community?
I think what I've learned most, right, is this idea of being patient and gentle with those who I am interacting with and or photographing. Also, right, in a way, decolonizing and debunking the language of photography, right? Like I'm not shooting anyone, I'm photographing someone, right? I'm not capturing someone, right? No, like I'm freezing this moment, I'm historicizing, I'm documenting. So really what I've learned throughout photography is how do I start to break away from my understanding or how the understanding of photography came to me, right? And then how do I then use that to engage my community? And it's that I don't want to come in and like, hey, I'm taking these photos, rather than like, no, I'm a part of this community, and I respect the boundaries that you set and that where you want me and how you want me to be in it, right? I'm not like, I'm not, yeah, I'm gonna just leave it at that. I'm gonna keep it there. Sorry.
No, that was an awesome response. Thank you.
Yeah.
Tony, I was going to ask you something similar. Like, kind of, what have you found to be the biggest reward when connecting children with photography, both for yourself, and what have you found has been most rewarding for them?
I was actually just talking about this today with some of my coworkers and some of my students. Kids today, I mean, I guess kids all the time, how often are they asked what they think? Like they're told what to think, they're told what to do. You act like this, you speak when you're spoken to, you're expected to do this. But what we really try to do is ask, our students questions and get them to try to come up with their own answers. They want to know, they want to show us photos and they say, is this photo good? And I'm just like, ask, do you think it's good? Ask your classmates, do you think it's good? Why is it good? Why is it not good? Find your own meaning. Make, figure it out on your own. We're so used to, and as a teacher, I'm guilty of this too. We want to, take shortcuts and like tell the kids how to do things, right? But we're doing them a disservice if we don't let them learn on their own, and really understand what it is. And the fact that they have really powerful stories to tell. I'm guilty of, weaponizing my kids a little bit in the beginning. I've been teaching in West Kensington for over 20 years. And sometimes I'd walk the kids around the neighborhood and say, look at what's going on. Let's take pictures of this stuff. It never occurred to me that they might not want to, they see it every day, like we know this, like maybe, take it somewhere else, and it only was later that I was like, I never asked them if that's something they really wanted to do. So if it's something that they choose to do, then great. We have that discussion and I try to lead them in that direction where they can make their own choices. And then we could try to support them along the way as they figure out who they are as, young kids growing up in 2022. Sometimes, just because we happen to be of color also, I'm a little bit older, I think I know what it's like to walk in their shoes, but it's not, 1982 anymore. It's 2022. Things are a lot different now than when I was a kid. So sometimes I think we need to do a little bit more listening and having the kids come up with this stuff on their own instead of trying to tell them what to do.
Yeah, that's a great point. Thank you. I wonder, Danielle, if you have like any similar experiences with your youth program that can kind of relate to that.
I do. So one of the things that I tried to build into the program is for the students to be able to build their own body of work. I think everyone has their own ideas, and like this now is the time when you're not, sitting in an art class that has this rigorous curriculum and you have to like draw figures or do still life or whatever, but you have like now this opportunity to really create and create without anybody telling you what to do. Because again, like I would do like street photography. It's like, okay, let's do street photography. And then, okay, let's do studio lighting. And those are great skills to have, you know what I mean? They're definitely great things that everyone can pull from doing things that they're not necessarily interested in or that they want to pursue fully. And I think that that's great. Like learning to work with available light is a great skill that you can get from street photography, even if street photography is not your thing. And then learning how to set up lights is a great like money-making tool, even if studio photography isn't something that you want to do. So I try to give them those little like skills, but in terms of creating, like building your own body of work, like learning how to articulate yourself clearly. Like I'm not here to tell anybody what to make art about or how to make art or what's right or wrong, because there is no right or wrong. Everything's subjective anyway. So it's great to see students come in, not really know anything about photography, learn a couple things, and then be able to fully blossom by the end of the year into like a full-blown body of work. Probably one of the most exciting things I've ever done in my life. And extremely rewarding to see kids like see their images bigger than they ever thought that they would see it, you know what I mean? And be able to participate in a final exhibition and have these tools that are very technically how to be successful as an artist. Like you need lines on your CV. I get it. So I'll give those to you. But more importantly, being able to articulate yourself, stand up for your work, know exactly what it is that you're trying to say, and have somebody guiding you along the way to be like, hey, like there's nothing wrong with this blurry photo. I will always be in defense of a blurry photo. You just have to be able to tell me why you like it. And here's a vocabulary to help you do that.
I like that.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's very sharp. Very sharp.
I was going to ask you, Danielle, kind of how your students evolve from the beginning of the program and their experiences, and how they come out of that afterwards. And you kind of covered that pretty thoroughly, but I guess more of like personally too, just as not only as photographers, but as people, and kind of how they come out of the program. And I was also wondering what a lot of the students seem to like go on to after the program.
So I do my best to tie in the things that they're already interested in. So one of my previous students loved writing. So when we got their photo book together, we went through the library a lot, and they were able to learn more about bookmaking, which is something that they were interested in already. And they made this incredible book. It's like probably one of the most beautiful books that I've ever seen. Our CEO said that it was like collegiate level bookmaking. And I was like, I don't think that I can't say that I've never been more proud, because I'm proud of all my students, I guess, but I was just like absolutely blown away. And then one student like took the time to really like seriously dive into their familial history, and learn about and do research about what it means to be in a blended family. And I learned so much that year about things that I never even considered. It's like, okay, yeah, I know like sometimes like families split apart, sometimes they come back together, but I don't really know what that means. You know what I mean? And to be able to learn that through them and through their experiences and how happy they were, you know, with their families, like both sides, or I guess all three sides, because it was like their mom's side, their dad's side, and then, you know, they both like came together in the end again. But then also having them learn about politics and political awareness, and you know what I mean? Like I had several students last year that didn't know what Roe v. Wade was. And I don't want to say that it radicalized them, but it did make them start paying attention to, you know, people are going to be making decisions for you. So it's up to you to pay attention, stay informed, and things like that. And it's interesting what those eye-opening moments are for each person, because for some people it was the war in Ukraine, for other people it was, you know, people without uteruses making decisions for people with uteruses and things like that. So I think another thing is like the nuanced conversations that we get a chance to have, like students asking like, oh, is it okay to take images of folks that are suffering with homelessness? And I was like, okay, let's spend like the rest of the class talking about this, because technically it's not wrong. No one can stop you, but you have to confront yourself with what you're doing with this image. Like, are you making money off of it? Why are you taking this picture? Like, is it because you're feeling such a strong reaction to something and you want to call attention to it? But then we have to think about what are some other ways that we might want to call attention to this, that's not just using someone's image in a way that doesn't dignify them, that might not make them feel dignified and without their consent. So we have these interesting conversations, like nuanced conversations that no one really, I know I didn't have when I was first starting off. Like I was just like out in the streets taking random candids of people all the time, you know what I mean? And not necessarily thinking about whether or not I'm representing them in a way that they would be okay with. But it's nice to have those conversations with people younger, because now they get to think more about how their artistry is not necessarily only about them. Like you're not the only one that's being impacted. You can't change the way people think or feel about your art really, but you can be mindful about the things that you do and how they make people feel.
Definitely, thank you. That kind of relates to a question that I had for Kevin. I'm not sure if he's on here. If he is, if you are, please speak up. If not, the question was kind of about I kind of was talking to him about being a photographer, being part of a mutual aid, wanting to document communities that you're helping, but also do that in a respectful way while upholding dignity. And we kind of did talk about people who photograph, how people who are houseless, and in that sort of situation, and the benefits but also dangers of that, and that fine line. So I was kind of asking a little bit about that, but I wonder, Leroy, if like how you approach communities and the people that you photograph, and if you ever have been in a situation where you've had to question your intent going into a shoot, or or any thought processes behind that.
Yeah, I mean, so for me personally, so I start off with this. For someone who is houseless, so there are things that I do not touch when I am approaching my work. Those who present that they're struggling mentally due to mental illnesses, those who are houseless, uh and those who are, you know, I don't, because I didn't go into photography to promote more of that, right? And it's not to say there are some who do it to bring awareness. I'm just not, I've just made that decision when I first picked up the camera. I am going to be the one that does not focus on that. There are folks who wants to focus on that, and that's okay if that's what they want to do. But for me, how I approach specifically the North Philadelphia area is uh I first of all just walk around. I walk around probably for an hour without holding my camera up, putting it in someone's face, and talking with the community members, right? Like, um, and then allow it to organically happen, whatever the moment may be. So, for example, there may be a group of men on the corner, right? They'll see me and I'll be like, "Hey, what's going on, brother?" Or I'll give salams. As a Muslim, I'll say "Assalamu alaikum," and that would then be my approach to asking, "Hey, y'all can just do whatever y'all want to do. Can I just be here and just photograph you guys?" And that's usually my approach with everyone that's in the community. I've learned early on that I'm not a street photographer, specifically in like North Philadelphia and certain parts in West Philadelphia, because uh that's unacceptable in certain neighborhoods. Pulling a camera out and just taking someone's photo, there again, decolonizing the language of photography, taking someone's photo is not cool. And you will get approached. And sometimes that approach will not be pretty. So I learned early on that if I do want to historicize and document and photograph these communities, I'm asking permission. I am being not being sneaky, wearing all black. You know, just the culture of like that street photography, wearing all black, trying to sneak through the no, it's nothing sneaky going on. Like I'm making it very known that I'm here and I want to historicize and document you because I care about you. And you deserve to be in places like books and museums and things like that. That's my approach.
Awesome, thank
But
you.
that's harder, right? And that's something, like I struggled with when I was younger. It was so easy, right? To go out and
Yeah.
get those photos, those quick photos. And it's not until maybe you get a little older, a little wiser, a little more empathetic that you realize that, these are people, they didn't necessarily agree to be photographed. And even though maybe you're not making money off of them, you didn't ask them, and those are conversations that we have with our students. What if that was your cousin? What would you like them to use their picture without being asked? How is it worth going in there and getting that quick photo? You need to, think it through.
I also mentioned how like terrifying it is in this day and age, like with social media and everyone being recorded all the time, and you never know if you go to the grocery store if you're gonna end up on somebody's TikTok page or something like that. Like that is terrifying. And it's so normalized nowadays that it's like I don't know if it's because I'm a photographer that I'm so like conscious of my image, to the point where like I don't like photos being taken of me as a photographer, which is funny enough, you know what I mean? Unless I can like set it up. It's like, okay, I want to stand right here, you hold the camera like this, and you go 3, 2, 1 and go. And then I'm okay with the image. But like otherwise, if someone else has control of the camera, it's like not like anxiety giving, but it's weird. It's weird to like give your image to someone else. So I think like, and people know, like they'll ask you, they're like, what are you taking pictures of? Like, why are you taking pictures and things like that? And that confrontation is like justified. It's like, you should be asking everybody, why are you taking pictures of me and things like that? Because you don't know where it's going. But yeah, terrifying.
I think another dilemma, if I can add, is so I've been thinking about doing a project as far as making a book, but it's this dilemma I have with myself where it's like, wow, okay, I get this book published and I start to gain profit off of it. Like, how can I make this just and making sure, like, I don't feel right collecting all these photos that I've collected and then making money off of it, and then like the community not reaping nothing from it. And they're the reason why the book even exists, and they're the reason why the profit even exists. So it's this constant fight I go with myself, like, what is that fine line? How do I'm always thinking that, right? Like, when I do publish a book, like, how do I make sure that the community reap the fruits from that I'm getting as well from this, you know?
I think there are like tons of like ideas and things that you can do, you know what I mean? But it also, it's difficult. So like you would also have to think about how much money you're making off of the book. And are you thinking about the individuals who make up the book, or are you thinking about the community as a whole? It's a little bit easier to benefit the community as a whole because you can do something like start a program. It's like, oh, the proceeds from this book are going towards X, Y, and Z. Like you could do a canned food drive with the proceeds. You could have like a coat drive or something like that. You could set up a community health day or something like that. You know what I mean? Where those proceeds can go back to the community. But if you're thinking about the individual, it's going to be a little bit more difficult because you can't like break bread with everybody whose photos in the book, because you're getting down to like pennies depending on one, if you want your book to still be affordable, like maybe you're only selling the book for like $20 because you want the art to get back to the people, or something like that. There's a lot of things you can do. You can have a block party, you can have a cookout, you can feed the community, you can do a lot of things, but it depends. It depends, and you'll need help and things like that. But I do think there are plenty of things we can do.
Right. Thank you, Danielle.
And the fact that you're conflicted about it says a lot about you, you know, like you're thinking about that before, you know, going out there and just getting yours. So that means you're coming from a good place.
Thanks, Tony.
I had a point that I wanted to bring up, kind of like when I was doing these community photo events, it was really like how great it was to be in the communities and be talking and working with people directly and not just be doing a food drive, or which we did, but like, and these are all great things, raising money and that sort of thing, but also it kind of forced me to get into the community and meet people and be in places where I normally probably wouldn't have gone otherwise. And I think that was super important and super beneficial in the outcome of the whole project. For instance, I had to promote the community events that we did. The one was at the Northern Liberties Recreation Center, and first of all, I didn't know how many rec centers were in Philadelphia. I had no idea. And just when it came to like promoting that event, I thought the best way to do that would be to go to the rec centers specifically because it's a great space for community to gather, and it would be a good place to promote. So I just I targeted the recreation centers in Northern Liberties area and also the Bartram's Garden area where the other photo day was, and went and handed out flyers and tried to attend some of the events that they had, and just talk to the kids directly and talk to the adults and the parents directly about what we were doing. And yeah, I didn't even know how many rec centers we had. They're all over the place, how important they are to the community, how busy the people that are running the places are. It's not everyone has time to be on social media and email and promote the events that way. So I felt it was important to go in and do that work on my own. And so that was just like eye-opening in and of itself, and driving around Philadelphia to all of these different locations, and that was really great. But it was also, so I think that aspect is really important, but also just like hearing from the community directly what they need and what they want and what they could use help with was really important. Having someone say this is something that I could use help with, or I would, even after we did the photos, people would say, oh, I'm having this community event, we need a photographer, is that something that you'd be interested in doing? And being able to network that way and connect them with photographers that I know that may be interested in donating their time to help out the community even further beyond what the projects that we did. So being able to just like to have a dialogue face to face about and hear what the community needs directly was like really nice and really beneficial, I feel like. And it was also really great because like after the events, I had a lot of feedback from the people that participated saying that like, oh, your team was just like so nice and so welcoming. And just, we felt very heard. And I think just like putting these, like having our photo organization, having Gravy members and having our team just working in directly within the community was just really beneficial on both ends for sure. And I don't know, I'm not really sure where I'm going with that, but I just feel like being in communities directly is just like super important. And I've never had that experience like until now. And going forward with any like projects or future photo days that we may hold, just like how important community engagement is, being direct face to face and having those conversations. So. I'm not sure if there's anything you could take off of that, but I just figured I would share.
I think a point of contention that I have had with like nonprofits has been like showing up in communities and offering something that no one asked for. Whether or not it's like great, you know what I mean? It's like, yes, like after school programs are great. Children need a safe place to be. Fantastic. It's not a bad idea. But so often communities need other things than that. And it's like, I feel like if you are moving into a community and soliciting them for support, it's your job to support them and find out what they need and be the best neighbor that you can. Like there's more to doing good than just offering what you have when you have the ability or resources to find out what's necessary, and then do something about that as well. Like, yes, cameras are great. Yes, art is great. Yes, art has the potential to heal. It has the potential to diversify your bonds and expand your horizons and things like that. But it's also important to do other things like be responsive to trauma and understanding who these students are that are coming into your doors and what they've gone through and the other things that they need outside of just a camera to actually do the work that is required of this healing and storytelling and things like that. Because I think like one of the things is being like a trauma-informed responder or like a mandated reporter, like that's something that is like us, not a small thing, like it's a big thing or whatever, but it's something that like folks can do to make sure that when they are bringing these kids on, they're not not even just like these kids, like these human beings that they, you know, they don't have any previous relationship with, to understand that like you're not just meeting some random person and then being able to just like connect with them or, you know, build a relationship with them when there are other things that they need in order to get there with you. And I think it's like great and noble to like want to give skills and teach and be there for these students. But I think that there is a certain level of care and consciousness that is required or necessary that I think organizations that end up in these like neighborhoods have to do the work to make sure that they're well equipped to do.
I love what you said. I love what you said. It's so true. As a teacher for, 20 something years in North Philly, I could attest to that. But one of the things we've learned is that by partnering, right? By partnering with community organizations and schools, people that work right in the community. I mean, we've matched people who come in with the skill set. You say, hey, I'm a photographer, I have something to give. And they might not know how, or they might be going about it, they might go about it the wrong way. But if you can connect them with a teacher in a school and say, you know what, we could try to provide you some resources, you could do this together. The teacher has the connection with this community and the kids and the trust. And then now we can bring this person in, they could just teach them, worry about skills and come up with those lessons together and take that journey together. It's a lot to ask somebody who's not from a community to go in there and do all that. There's not that many unicorns out there, but I understand exactly where you're coming from, because that's hard to do. We've found people who are saying we've always wanted to volunteer, but just don't know how to do it. How do I find a community and I can work in and I could, contribute. I just don't know how. And sometimes it's trying to make those connections.
Also, if we had like infinite money, that would be tight, because then everyone could get the proper training, everyone can have the space and time to heal and do all of these other things. But then now that you mentioned like lessons, like now that's another thing that I'm thinking about, because like making sure that when students come to me for photography classes, I have to make sure that I have lessons that are sensitive to the things that they experience. Like I can't just only show all Black photographers if every student in my class is in Black, you know what I mean? Like I have to make sure that I am not like decolonizing the lens in like one singular way, because that's not fair, you know what I mean? So making sure that it's like not only like the emotional like labor and work is like able to be done, but like the intellectual as well. Like decolonizing the lens is a long and arduous process. And you have to hold yourself accountable. You have to have checks and balances and things like that. But it's like, there's just so many things. It's easy to like not fall short, but it's easy to not always check all the boxes. But I think that it's important to try to check as many boxes as we can.
Well said, thank you. I had a question, I guess mostly for like Danielle and Tony, about, I know that through working with Photography Without Borders, there was a conversation about the importance like the families hold in the students' like lives and their participation in the program, and kind of wanting to include them in the project as well, just because, yeah, their support and involvement with the program was big, just as much as the students' involvement was. And I don't know if you guys could just speak a little bit more to that, maybe.
Of the importance of working with parents in general, or in as part of this project?
Yeah, kind of like the families' support and involvement, and how it's not just about having the students in the program, but also how their families have been part of all of that as well.
Yeah, I mean, they come together, right? That's if you have a kid, a student, you also have their family. They come with them. They're the ones that they live with. They've informed them, taught them, about life, and that's that. Their little circle. And in fact, what we do is make sure that we kind of have like some steps that we go through with our students as they go in our program, using the camera to sort of figure out who they are. And we start with the kid as an individual, and then we broaden the circle and now start exploring your family, understand where you come from. In fact, the theme for us for this year, we're specifically talking about identity. A lot of our kids are Puerto Rican descent or Latino descent, and they might not really know what that means. Their idea of being Puerto Rican is way different than someone from the island. And they figure that out by doing their photos and talking to their family. And we get them to have some of those conversations, and we have some of those conversations in class and get them to start asking questions on their own. What does that mean to me? How do I show in a photograph who I am? Which is not an easy thing to do unless you're doing like holding up a flag, which is like a cheap way to do it. How do you really do it and really show where I come from and honor, my heritage? These are some great conversations to have. And sometimes the parents really love it. They love the fact that these kids are starting to ask some of these questions. They've probably been trying to get them to think about it for a long time. But once the kid gets there on their own, then and the parents, they get to see growth in their kids, and then they end up being great partners to work with. And sometimes we've actually had a couple parents take the class along with their kids, which is always really fun.
This is I honestly don't know how to answer this question. I think my relationship with the program is so like student focused. Like I am definitely aware of the role that a home unit or whatever a student's community is like plays a role in like who they are and how they show up and what their needs are and all these other things and how they create and how they think. But I've never really focused so much on the parents' involvement. And I think the only time I ever really interact with parents is usually at the end of the year, which is great. Like I love seeing them show up and celebrate their students at the end of the year exhibition. I love seeing how excited they get to see their students or their child's books and things like that. I think outside of many of my students telling me like, oh, my parents is here to pick me up, so I'm gonna leave now. Like, I'm just like, okay, like that's showing up. Like, that's lovely. Like, I'm glad your parent is here at 5:59 on the dot to pick you up because they love you very much. Like, that's great to see and hear and things like that. And I think in getting to know students, you kind of see what the impact of parents is/are. And when you see students that are like, when you see like their confidence or their brilliance or like whatever shine, like you kind of attribute that to, the way that they were raised. And I'm happy to say that all of my students have been great. So I'm happy to attribute that to who they have at home.
Thank you. So we did have a question in the chat. I would like the person who asked the question to kind of give us a little bit more detail on what they're hoping for from that question. I'm wondering if it's okay if we open up questions to maybe people in the chat, have them unmute themselves and ask you guys some questions directly. Would that be okay with you guys?
Sure.
Okay, great. Okay, so I'm going to start with the one that we have from Betty. She asked, how do you inform yourselves about the cultural, historical landscapes of these communities? I think that's open to everyone. And if Betty wants to put a little bit more into that question, that's fine. You can unmute yourself. And if any of the panelists have any thoughts on that question, you can chime in.
I've been lucky enough to have, some volunteers. Some people come up and say that they wanted, usually young people in college or something, looking for credit, but sometimes just looking for an experience, maybe to learn. And most of them have had nothing to do with North Philadelphia. You know, kids coming from, you know, across the city because they want to get that experience. And you sometimes the only way to get that is by hands-on experience. Like I would suggest you volunteer. You know, we always looking for people, especially if they have photographic background, to come in and share some knowledge with the students. You know, figure out a way to fit. We could figure out a way to get you to fit in with what it is that we're doing, because we do an equal amount of listening to teaching. A lot of times the kids are really talking, and that's the best way to learn, is listening when the kids are sharing, you know, about some of the things through their photos or some of their conversations. That's really the only way you can really learn about a community that's different than yours, because the only stuff you usually get is that you see on TV or something like that, and that's not real. You know, that's stuff that, you know, people are just making up. But I know we're always open to having people volunteer, and in the schools that I've worked with before, they're always open to having people come in and volunteer to work with the kids. So that's a suggestion.
How do you inform yourselves about? So I think a suggestion is to Tony's point, right? Just listen. Go to the, like, be present in the community, talk to people, engage with people. Right at this, like, it's really, especially when you talk about documenting communities, it's a human exchange. Like, it's humanizing the experience simply by talking, saying hello. A very great um elder, John Henry Clark, he said, our libraries are, or protect our elders because they're our libraries, right? So go to the elders of the community and really get to understand what those communities were, what they are, and what that transition was. Because they know, they seen a lot more than, say, someone for me who wants to go into the community that I've ever seen in my life. I mean, you're talking about someone who's an elder who's 65, 80. You know, these people are soaked with knowledge and wisdom. Sit under them and just hear what they have to say about the communities.
I definitely don't have much going into communities and speaking to people experience. I'm like super introverted. So having those conversations is not something that I necessarily want to do. I'd rather do research, maybe read a book or something like that. But it always blows my mind how willing people are to talk. Like, people will talk to you if you ask them about the community. Like, they will tell you, they'll let you know everything. They'll tell you what they saw, they'll tell you what they didn't see. You know what I mean? Like, people want to share information with you, especially like older folks, because they don't have anything to do but sit down and talk. You know what I mean? So I'm more of a learn on my own type of person. But I do think like having those conversations and hearing those stories is probably one of the livelier ways to go.
Awesome. It looks like Betty is raising their hand if you want to add on to that question at all.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm not going to turn on the video, but what I will say is I'm a very culturally oriented person. And when it became my interest to go into communities outside of my African American community, which was the Latina community, and this is in the 80s, before the words art and social change even were in existence. And the one thing I knew is that I loved the music in the Puerto Rican community and the food. So one of the things that I would suggest is going and being familiar with the established cultural organizations that have served the community for decades, be a part of what goes on when they have their activities, their festivals, and other, just one which is one of
Oh, Betty, I think you're breaking up a little bit. I'm not sure if it's just from me or if it might be your internet. access, but I could hear you clearly up until your last sentence or
Can you
so.
now? Can
Still
you hear me
choppy,
now better?
a little better. Yeah.
Okay. I'll just say, align yourself and be familiar with the cultural institutions within the communities that you are trying to, as well as the schools, which was just said a moment ago. But one of my main resources was interacting with the cultural communities, going to their festivals, finding out about their cultural histories, the symbols, the even language, as much language as I could. But sometimes there are things right at you don't know about because you don't know maybe about the history of the Taino people who were the forebears of Puerto Ricans and certain symbols that are in community within murals and other things. But if you don't know what they are, you won't pick up on that. So I would just say that people should, as much as possible, find out where the gardening is going on, where the cultural centers are. I just mentioned Cali or Puerto Riqueño, which is an excellent place to start. One of the huge gardens called Paricelas, which is run a wonderful woman named Iris Brown. Americans would say Iris, but Iris Brown is connected with the Norris Square community. They're very well established entities that serve that population. Find out where they are and see what to do. Go to their events, and that is a different kind of way to enter the community on a level that is not just purely an institutional level. Get to know where the community hubs are. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. That was really great. Thank you. Does anybody else have any other questions in the participant? Anybody in the chat have any questions? Do you guys want to ask any of the panelists specifically or as a whole? If so, feel free to unmute yourself, and I would love to hear your questions. Yeah. All right, well, if we don't have any questions, if there are any more thoughts from our panelists, I would love to hear them. We did have somebody ask if we're going to have a recording of this available, of this conversation available for participants to access. I think we can probably make it live on our website. So I would recommend following Gravy Studio and 2020 Photo Festival, and we will post updates there about that. Any last thoughts or questions from anyone? All right, well, thank you guys for all joining us. I really appreciate it. I loved hearing a little bit more about everyone's practices, and I think this was a really great start to a few different types of conversations, and I appreciate you all for joining us. Stay posted on on our websites, and oh, it looks like we might have a question. Okay.
But that charger works with that. I don't know what I did.
Cool. Oh, can I ask my question? I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Cool. Peace, beautiful people. Hope you're all well. To the person, last name is Leah Craft. I wanted to know, first, thank you for all the information you provided. Okay. But I wanted to know the other group of people you mentioned, besides the folks behind the Norris Square community.
The organization called Taller, Taller, Puerto Riqueño, Puertorriqueno.
I know that Photography Without Borders has worked with them as well. So
Yeah, and we have a program at Tayed. I'm going to put Tayed's website in the chat.
Thank you.
Can I say a last thought real fast?
of course.
To anyone that's on here, please encourage others under you to document and historicize what's happening now. This time is only limited, and that it needs to be recorded for those who are under us to look at, and then leave the breadcrumbs for the next generation and next generation. Let's continue to build the I guess the story of the Philadelphia experience. It's very, very important. It's very important.
If you don't prove that you were here, they'll say that you weren't.
Here we go.
Thank you guys. I really enjoyed this. I loved having you all with me. Thank you for your questions. And yeah, keep posted on 2020 Photo Festival and Gravy Studios websites and Instagrams, and we'll post updates about where you can find a recording of this and other programming that we have going on. Thanks again, guys. Have a great night.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank you.
Liz.
Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Appreciate the opportunity.
Definitely, Liz. Thanks. And thanks for the great conversation, everybody.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.